It's Saturday, February 14th, 2026, and what I'm about to show you represents one of the most catastrophic weather disasters in modern American history. The bomb cyclone that developed off the southeast coast has officially become what meteorologists are calling a historic storm that has completely devastated communities from the Carolinas all the way down to South Florida, where iguanas are literally falling from trees as record-breaking cold grips areas that haven't seen temperatures this low since 1989. This is not just another winter storm. This is a weather catastrophe that has fundamentally altered the landscape of the American Southeast and created humanitarian crises that will persist for weeks or potentially months to come. The bomb cyclone that intensified off the Carolina coast over the weekend achieved what meteorologists consider a textbook example of explosive cyclogenesis, with pressure dropping so rapidly that it created near-hurricane-force winds exceeding 70 miles per hour along coastal areas, while simultaneously dumping historic amounts of snow across regions that rarely see significant winter precipitation. Charlotte, North Carolina, experienced its heaviest snowfall in over 20 years, with accumulations reaching over a foot in parts of the metropolitan area, while coastal communities like Nags Head and Virginia Beach endured near-blizzard conditions that created snowdrifts several feet high and rendered major transportation corridors completely impassable. The death toll from this weather disaster has now reached staggering proportions, with at least 100 confirmed fatalities across multiple states, making this one of the deadliest winter weather events in United States history. The causes of death range from hypothermia and exposure to carbon monoxide poisoning, as people desperate for heat resorted to dangerous heating methods, to vehicle accidents on roads that became ice rinks virtually overnight. In North Carolina alone, state officials report over 1,000 vehicle collisions during the height of the storm, including a massive pileup involving more than 100 vehicles on Interstate 85 near Charlotte that required National Guard assistance to clear. What makes this event particularly devastating is the unprecedented reach of the Arctic air mass that followed in the storm's wake. Temperatures in South Florida plummeted into the 20s on Sunday morning, representing the coldest conditions the region has experienced since 1989. Miami's temperature dropped to the mid-30s, approaching the all-time record low of 36 degrees set in 1909. The image of cold-stunned iguanas lying motionless on sidewalks and falling from trees has become a stark symbol of just how far south this Arctic blast has penetrated into normally tropical regions. The bomb cyclone designation refers to a meteorological phenomenon where a low-pressure system undergoes rapid intensification, with the central pressure dropping at least 24 millibars in 24 hours. This particular storm exceeded those criteria dramatically, intensifying at a rate that caught even seasoned meteorologists off guard. The storm achieved a minimum central pressure of 964 millibars as it moved offshore of the Carolinas, comparable to a Category 3 hurricane in terms of intensity, though its impacts were delivered through snow and ice rather than storm surge and torrential rain. The snow accumulations from this event have been truly historic for the southeastern United States. The mountains of western North Carolina recorded up to 17 inches of snow, while coastal areas from the Outer Banks to Myrtle Beach saw accumulations that local weather services described as once-in-a-generation events. The National Weather Service office in Wilmington, North Carolina, stated that some areas hadn't seen this amount of accumulating snow in over 30 years, with many locations setting new all-time snowfall records. The blizzard conditions that developed along the coast were particularly dangerous due to the combination of heavy snow and extreme winds. Sustained winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour, with gusts exceeding 70 miles per hour, created whiteout conditions that made travel not just difficult, but genuinely life-threatening. The Outer Banks, which are normally protected from severe winter weather by their coastal location, experienced conditions that longtime residents described as unlike anything they had ever witnessed. The infrastructure impacts from this storm have been catastrophic and long-lasting. Over 102,000 homes and businesses remain without power across the Southeast as of Monday morning, with many of these outages representing customers who have now been without electricity for more than a week, following the previous ice storm that struck the region. The combination of ice damage from the earlier storm and snow loading from this weekend's blizzard has created a perfect storm of utility infrastructure failure that is proving extremely difficult to repair under continued extreme weather conditions. The transportation sector has been completely paralyzed across the affected region. Charlotte Douglas International Airport, one of the busiest hubs in the southeastern United States, was forced to cancel over 800 flights on Sunday alone, representing the majority of its scheduled operations. The ripple effects of these cancellations have been felt nationwide, as Charlotte serves as a major connecting point for air travel throughout the region. Highway travel has been equally affected, with major interstates including I-85, I-77, and I-40 experiencing complete closures or severely restricted traffic for extended periods. The economic implications of this disaster are staggering and will be felt for months to come. The combination of business closures, transportation disruptions, infrastructure damage, and agricultural losses is expected to result in billions of dollars in economic impact. The citrus industry in Florida, which was already struggling from previous cold events this winter, has suffered what industry experts are calling potentially catastrophic losses as temperatures dropped well below the threshold that citrus trees can survive. The agricultural devastation extends far beyond citrus crops. Vegetable farms across Georgia and the Carolinas that supply much of the nation's winter produce have experienced crop losses that will be felt in grocery stores across the country. The timing of this cold blast, coming during what should be peak growing season for winter crops, represents a worst-case scenario for agricultural producers who were counting on these harvests to sustain their operations through the remainder of the winter. The human suffering caused by this event cannot be overstated. In Tennessee, which was still recovering from the previous week's ice storm, officials report that tens of thousands of people have now been without power for over a week during some of the coldest weather the region has experienced in years. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell confirmed 3 additional storm-related deaths in the city, bringing the local total to levels that represent a genuine humanitarian crisis. The University of Mississippi has been forced to remain closed through February 8th due to ongoing impacts from winter weather, representing an unprecedented disruption to educational operations in a region where such extended weather-related closures are virtually unheard of. The decision reflects not just the immediate dangers posed by the weather, but the broader infrastructure challenges that are preventing normal operations from resuming. Emergency shelters across the affected region are operating at or beyond capacity as displaced residents seek warmth and basic services. The American Red Cross has deployed resources typically reserved for major hurricanes to address the scope of this disaster, establishing warming centers and emergency shelters from Florida to Virginia. The organization has called this one of their largest winter weather disaster responses in recent memory. The meteorological factors that created this disaster represent a convergence of atmospheric conditions that climate scientists have been warning about for years. The position of the jet stream, the availability of moisture from both Atlantic and Gulf sources, and the timing of Arctic air intrusions combined to create a perfect storm scenario that maximized both the intensity of the storm system and the extent of the cold air mass that followed. The bomb cyclone's development was enhanced by what meteorologists call baroclinic instability, where sharp temperature contrasts in the atmosphere create conditions favorable for rapid storm intensification. The collision between the Arctic air mass moving south and the relatively warm waters of the Gulf Stream provided the energy source needed for the storm to achieve its explosive development offshore of the Carolinas. The coastal flooding that accompanied this event has been another significant concern, particularly given the timing with astronomical high tides associated with the full moon. Moderate to significant coastal flooding has been reported from northeastern North Carolina through southeastern New England, with some areas experiencing their worst coastal flooding since major hurricanes. The combination of storm surge, high astronomical tides, and persistent strong onshore winds has created conditions that have damaged coastal infrastructure and threatened low-lying communities. The wind effects from this storm have been particularly destructive along the immediate coast, where hurricane-force gusts created conditions typically associated with major tropical cyclones. The persistent strong winds have not only contributed to the blizzard conditions inland, but have also generated dangerous surf and beach erosion that will have lasting impacts on coastal communities. Norfolk, Virginia, and Virginia Beach experienced sustained winds that caused widespread tree damage and power outages that compound the winter weather impacts. The temperature records being set across the region represent a fundamental shift in the weather pattern that has implications extending well beyond this single event. More than 40 record low temperatures were recorded on Sunday and Monday, with many locations setting not just daily records, but monthly records for February. The extent and magnitude of these temperature departures from normal indicate that this is not just an unusually cold spell, but a historic weather event that will be remembered and studied for decades to come. The recovery from this disaster will be complicated by the fact that many communities are still dealing with impacts from previous winter weather events. The cumulative effect of multiple severe weather events in a short time span has overwhelmed local resources and created compound vulnerabilities that make recovery efforts more difficult and dangerous. Emergency responders are operating under conditions that push the limits of their equipment and training, while utility workers are attempting repairs under weather conditions that make normal restoration procedures extremely hazardous. Looking forward, the atmospheric pattern that created this disaster shows little sign of abating. The polar vortex disruption that allowed Arctic air to penetrate so far south remains active, and meteorologists are warning of the potential for additional significant weather events in the coming weeks. The combination of continued cold temperatures and the possibility of additional storm systems creates a scenario where communities may not have adequate time to recover before facing new challenges. The social and psychological impacts of this disaster are also becoming apparent, as communities that are unaccustomed to severe winter weather struggle to cope with conditions that have persisted for days longer than anyone anticipated. The combination of power outages, transportation disruptions, and extreme cold has created isolation and stress that mental health professionals warn could have lasting effects on affected populations. This bomb cyclone and its aftermath represent a stark reminder of the vulnerability of modern society to extreme weather events and the cascading failures that can occur when multiple systems are stressed simultaneously. The death toll, economic damage, and human suffering caused by this event will serve as a case study in disaster preparedness and response for years to come, while the meteorological aspects will be analyzed to improve forecasting and warning systems for future similar events.